This is TIMS support video number 2. The intent of this video is to show you the different data sets that have been built into the system, as well as to familiarize you with the 6 different themes that we spoke about in the previous video and the layers under each theme. And as we mentioned, there are a few different ways to enter the TIMS application. There are 2 ways through the internal website and 1 way through the external website. We'll go ahead and use the internal website this time. We'll just select Get Started at the bottom center of the page. And once the application loads, you'll notice that we're zoomed to the full extent of Ohio and the Find Location on Map box appears. We'll exit out of this box for now. We won't need it for this tutorial. And if you'll look right up here, you'll notice the 6 themes. We have transportation assets, road inventory, boundaries, traffic counts, transportation projects, safety, and we also have a legend, as well as a base map. To get started, we'll just click on transportation assets, and under this theme you'll notice a number of different layers. Many of the layers are grayed out because they are scale dependent, and as you can see, if we select the bridges layer as well as the transportation assets theme, nothing appears. But if we zoom in closer to Central Ohio, we'll see that that bridges layer will appear. Now let's zoom in even closer for more clarity. And you're able to see bridges over roads and highways. And one useful tool to use with this layer is the base maps tool. You're able to change the transparency of the streets layer in order to see the aerial view of the information under the map. And if you'll notice, a few of these bridges were built to accommodate rivers, some were built to accommodate railroads, and others were built to accommodate highway overpasses. And there are many different uses for bridges throughout Ohio. And once you're finished viewing this information, we can zoom to the full extent of the map, and you'll notice that layer disappears. But in order to be sure that it won't show up again through a different search, we'll just uncheck the bridges layer here. We'll also go ahead and reset our base map back to 100%. Now let's look at the aviation layer. This layer doesn't require zooming. It's not scale dependent at all. And this layer just shows you all of the aviation facilities throughout Ohio. And if we zoom in closer to Central Ohio, we notice that that there are different symbols within this layer. So this is where we'll use the legend to understand what each symbol means. We have Class 1 airports, Class 2 airports, Class 3 airports, public-owned heliports, and public-owned seaplane bases. In Central Ohio, it looks like most of these symbols are represented, except for the public-owned seaplane base. So if we zoom out and pan across the screen a little, we'll notice that there is a public-owned seaplane base to the northwest of us. So this is beneficial in understanding the proximity of different aviation facilities within Ohio. And once we're finished viewing this information, we'll go ahead and reset to the full extent of the map. We'll uncheck aviation as well as the transportation assets theme, and we'll move on to road inventory. Road inventory is very similar to transportation assets. There are also a number of layers under this theme that are scale dependent as well. And under this theme there is a layer where there's a grouped layer where there are multiple layers underneath it. So if we were to check the first layer as well as the group layer and the road inventory theme, we'll notice that a layer appears. And we'll go ahead and check the second one as well. And if you'll notice, the second one is a little cut off by this box, so this is where the legend will come in handy, and we're able to read the meanings of each of these symbols. The first symbol that we selected was the interstate rural route, and it's represented by two thick blue lines outlining a white solid line. The second layer we selected was another principal arterial route, rural route, and this is represented by a solid orange line. Now, if we were to scale in closer, you'll notice that only one more layer appeared. And this just means there is plenty of information still under these grayed out layers, so we'll need to zoom in even closer to view that information. But for now, we'll just go ahead and move on to a separate layer. The scenic byways layer does not require zooming at all. It's not a scale dependent layer. But as you can see, there are many different colors represented in this map. So we'll go ahead and access the legend. There's only one layer that you'll need to select in order to see this, but there are a number of different symbols within this layer. All the symbols are the same size and shape, but there are a lot of different colors within the layer. And that's just because scenic byways in Ohio are divided by number, so the color just represents a number within the layer. And we can zoom in closer to see the scenic byways in relation to highways and waterways, just to get an understanding of what's represented within the map. Okay, and once we're finished viewing that information, we'll go ahead and uncheck scenic byways as well as road inventory. Reset to the full extent of our map, and we'll move on to boundaries. The boundaries layer theme represents a lot of division information. If we were to select State House districts, you'll see how the State House districts divide over counties, townships, regions, MPOs. So let's go ahead and select county. You'll notice that a few State House districts sometimes span a number of counties, and sometimes there are multiple within one county. And if we select ODOT district boundaries, we'll notice the same instance occurs where State House district boundaries span through different ODOT district boundaries as well as counties. As you can see here, State House District 87 spans across ODOT District 10 and 9, as well as 5 different counties. And once you're finished viewing that information, we'll just uncheck and zoom to the full extent of our map. With the traffic counts theme, there are only 2 layers under this theme, but there's such a wealth of information. Let's go ahead and zoom in closer. And you'll notice that even at this extent, it's still very hard to understand. So we'll go ahead and view one layer at a time. We'll start with traffic segments. The symbol for traffic segments is all the same size. So we'll look at the legend to understand the different colors. The navy blue line represents not the lesser heavily traveled roads, while the darker red line represents heavily traveled roads. And this type of traffic segments map is very useful for planning. If a new developer comes into the city and is looking to build a new shopping complex or, let's say, new housing complex, it's easy to look at traffic patterns to understand how the new complex might impact these patterns. So if they were looking to build in an area where there's not a lot of traffic or very calm traffic, they may consider the south side or southwest side of town. Whereas if maybe a shopping complex were looking to be located right in the center of an area where there's plenty of traffic, they might want to consider the northeast side of town. Now the traffic stations map, once we select that layer, we'll see that there are two additional symbols that appear. We'll look at the legend to gain some understanding for these symbols as well. The larger green symbol represents a permanent station, while the smaller blue symbol represents a short-term station. The short-term stations can change or relocate over time, but the permanent stations will just continually collect traffic data for this road. So these stations are used to create these types of traffic segment maps. And that's what they're very useful for. And once we're finished viewing that information, we'll just uncheck traffic counts and zoom back to the full extent of our map. And now we'll view transportation projects. In order to view this layer, we'll need to zoom in closer. And if you look down at the scale at the left bottom of the screen, you'll see that this represents 5 miles. And even at the 5-mile scale, there's plenty of information. So we'll zoom in closer. And we begin to see roads and water features and different things like that. So it looks like if we zoom in, we'll see that it's nearly impossible to travel a mile without seeing a new transportation project happening in your area. So this type of map is just useful for the general public or anyone to view what's going on in their area. And once you zoom out, you're able to see a cluster of information. Okay, once we're finished viewing that map, we'll just uncheck it and zoom back to the full extent of our map. And move on to the safety layer. The safety layer is not an ODOT layer. This data comes from the State Highway Patrol and is subject to security. You will need additional clearance to access this data with a username and password. And to access this data, you'll need to follow this link for further instructions if you'd like to view the data. And at this point, I'd like to go ahead and conclude this support video. And we encourage you to go ahead and experiment and play around with different themes and tools and see how they can be combined together. And if you need any additional assistance, please feel free to call the Ohio Department of Transportation Office of Technical Services at 614-433-6438. Thank you, and you have a great day.